Hello, hello, and welcome to the Be the CEO of Your Life live show. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Yvonne of Amazing Self Coaching, and I help driven business owners to elevate their business to the next level so that you can make more impact, attract your ideal clients, make more money, and above all, get more time to enjoy the freedom of being an entrepreneur. And I'm very, very excited because today is a very special edition, and I have with me Audrey. Hello, Audrey.
Hey, Yvonne. Thank you so much for inviting me today.
It's my absolute pleasure. And, we're going to dive into marketing and everything that you need to be aware of as a business owners. But before we go there, I want to ask you to quickly introduce yourself to everybody who's watching.
Sure. I'm Audrey Glover-Dichter, and I'm an attorney. I'm located in South Florida, but it doesn't really matter because I practice federal law, and my practice focuses on advertising, marketing, and promotions law with 4 verticals, which includes intellectual property, privacy, ADA online compliance, and defense if you get a letter from the federal, state, or self-regulatory agencies.
Right. Okay. Well, we're going to take a deep dive into it, what it all means. But before we go there, this is the Be the CEO of Your Life live show. So I want to ask you. You are the CEO of your life, and tell us a bit about that. How does it feel? How is it for you?
Well, for me, it's the best. I love being the CEO of my own life. I love to be in control of my own destiny, make my own destiny, make my own choices. I have flexibility to come and go and do and be a mom and raise my kids. And yeah, I keep crazy hours, obviously, but I don't miss out on much because I make my own schedule and I decide who I want to work with. And so, yeah, it's the flexibility and the ability to decide how to move forward is awesome.
I love it. I love it so much. And when people are watching, what tips do you have for them to become the CEO of their lives like you've done?
Well, sometimes it can feel very scary to just take that leap of faith, but feel the fear and do it anyway. But of course, life is full of risk. So make sure it's a calculated risk. Have a plan so you can not just dive into an empty pool. You want the pool to be full of water, you know? So make sure that if you're going to do it, have a plan to follow and to keep developing as you grow. But yeah, feel the fear and do it anyway. Just because it's scary to even consider it, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it.
I love that. I love that a lot. And actually, it's I think quite fitting because you're saying feel the fear and do it anyway. But yet, I don't think that also applies to marketing, does it? And you can tell us about it because before I really knew about commercial and marketing law, I was like, well, as a business owner, I can do everything because it's my business, my marketing. So who's holding me back? That might be actually too risky. Am I right? Can you share a bit about that?
Yes, of course. Great question, actually. What I find as a marketing attorney that unfortunately, and not by anybody's fault, just by default, actually, that most small, medium startups type of businesses really and truly have no idea that this field of law exists and it applies to them because advertising, marketing, and promotions law applies to any business, regardless of size, regardless of product or service, and regardless of location or how much you make. it doesn't matter. If you have a marketing campaign, and yes, that does include your website and your social media, of
Okay.
course, it
Yeah.
does, you fall under the Federal Trade Commission laws of marketing law. So it affects everybody. So I try to educate as many people as humanly possible to help them be legally compliant with their marketing campaigns in order to hopefully avoid legal trouble or to at least minimize legal risk. So, yeah, it affects. It's just unfortunately that, obviously the huge multinational corporations are well aware. They have like an army of lawyers helping them get through this field, right? But
Yeah.
unfortunately, this is a landmine kind of field because that one word could cause you major headaches. Just one
Right.
word. Or that one picture, or that one photo, or that one music video, or the music, right? So I review in English and Spanish all campaigns, everything, and that includes your labeling, and that includes your packaging, because believe it or not, that is still part of your marketing campaign. So it is absolutely crucial to have everything and anything that is part of your marketing campaign reviewed for consistency and compliance.
Right. Okay. So basically, if I hear you correctly, you're saying, even as a small business owner, you really need to be aware. And it's what you post on social media, it's what you put on your website, it is the pictures that you share, the music that you use. Basically, can I maybe just say that it's everything you do online? Would that be a good understanding?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Because think about this. The question is, what does the consumer take away from your post?
Hmm.
What is a reasonable consumer? That's what the law says. So it's not just what you say, it's also what are you implying?
Right.
So what is your message? Right? So it needs to be reviewed for consistency and legal compliance. And again, it's not just advertising law. Also, don't forget that it depends on the service of the product. Most
Mhm.
federal agencies, if not all, have their own set of advertising laws. So the FDA has a whole different world of what should and shouldn't, do's and don'ts. And then the SEC just published a whole new set of rules for advertising and so on and so forth. So it becomes overwhelming to a startup, small, medium business who is completely unaware. And then all of a sudden they may get, somebody may sue them, or they may get a letter from a federal agency saying you're not in compliance. Please help, work with us and tell us what this is. You need to come into compliance. Or you may get challenged, and there's a group of self-regulatory bodies in this country that are in the industry to make sure that the industry is following the rules.
Mhm.
So and that's called a challenge. So it's not technically a lawsuit. You're not getting a letter from the federal government. You're not getting a letter from a state agency. This is a self-regulatory body that you can also get dragged into, and it's a challenge, and you have to, you know, show how you can support your claims or whatever the issue may be, the problem, why you're there. That's what you have to do. So I help people. If that happens, I help people defend. um, I'm not a litigator, but I do team up with litigators so that I could help out with the substantive law. I let litigators do what they do best: litigate, right? Put on the case in the court. So, and also, I'm not licensed in all the states. So, I work with litigators nationwide while I support in the background, do litigation support by providing either the institutional knowledge if I worked on the campaign beforehand, or if obviously the law, because litigators don't know everything about every field of law, right?
Yeah.
So same here. So basically, one thing everybody needs to keep in mind, and this is very important, per the law, marketing campaigns must be legally compliant before launching the campaign publicly.
Right.
So,
Right.
and by the way, every state has their own rules too.
Yeah.
So, what does that mean? That means that you have to make sure that your campaign, everything and anything and everything that you're doing, regardless of the language you're using, whether it's English or Spanish or Portuguese or Chinese, it doesn't matter what language, it has to be legally compliant, period. Federally, obviously, depends on, again, what your product or your service is. You may have to bring in more than just the FTC regulations. Like, for example, cosmetics, over-the-counter drugs, or supplements. That seems to be a favorite enforcement of the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. So you start bringing all those in. And of course, you have to worry about the states, because not all the states have the same rules, right? So yeah, it gets a little cumbersome. And also it becomes even more interesting when I review campaigns. I review also for intellectual property problems. For example, do you have the right clearances? Do you have the right licensing, right? So just because I'm going to use this as an example, just because people pay to download a photo from, any of the online photo shops, right?
Yeah.
You need to be careful. What is it that you're paying for? Which licensing agreement are you paying for? And by the way, you don't own it. It's being licensed to you. It gives you the right to use it, but it depends on which licensing agreement you're paying for. It depends whether or not you can use it commercially.
Right.
And then also same thing with the music and video. So, or even better, what if the client actually has intellectual property? They must be, it has to be protected by filing either copyright, trademark, patents. I don't do patents. I only do copyright and trademark. But you want to make sure that that's protected before you launch publicly, because once in the public eye, how do you protect it if you haven't filed for that protection, right? So there's a lot to review. And of course, we are all online, right? So we all have websites, or at least most of us have websites. And once you have a website, you are technically advertising nationally and internationally. So now you're no longer a mom and pop shop, in a corner store if you have a website. Now, unless you can figure out how to tell the web, oh, sorry, no, don't go into this state or that city or that country, there's no limit as to who's going to land on your website. So that brings up a whole other bunch of laws, like privacy issues. Which laws are you going to be compliant with? Which ones apply?
So, but Audrey, then, because you're talking nationally about the US, right? But we speak to a global audience. So if somebody from Guatemala is now watching and they have a website, does that then also trigger any of those laws that you speak about? Or am I safe because I'm not dealing with the US?
That's a good question. So technically, if you are targeting the US market, US law applies regardless of where you're located.
Right.
But it gets more complicated, because for privacy law is not who you're targeting, it's where the customer is from.
So then,
yeah, right.
Okay, so if I'm not necessarily targeting someone in the US, but I'm just having a website, and I'm having global reach, and then I have a US customer buying, then all of a sudden US laws apply. But then it's interesting. So, because I also hear you say that it's depending on the state that the person is in. No, I hear you say that each state has different laws. So then I can have a customer in, what is it, Florida and in New York, and I'm based still in Guatemala, and I have to comply with both. That's undoable.
Well, again, the law is if you're targeting the US, if your market is the US market, you have to be compliant with US laws. So let's turn that around. We're in the US, and now we have, let's call it an EU citizen, right? Sitting in New York. So it's an EU resident, EU citizen sitting in New York purchasing something from California.
Yeah.
Right. So the question is, which privacy law attaches, right? Because now you have an EU client. So obviously it's an EU citizen. So GDPR potentially applies.
Mm-hmm.
But is that person a resident in New York? Because if that person is also a resident in New York, then maybe perhaps we're talking about the New York Shield Act that could be applicable. So it gets very convoluted at that point. So my suggestion is just be compliant.
Okay. So then we spoke around, I think the one thing, and I know not everybody gets it, but the one thing that's very clear for most of us, let me don't rephrase it because you can't generalize, but are pictures, right? You can't just take a picture, you can't just Google whatever and then use it. That's not allowed. You rather take your own pictures, or as you say, you buy them or you get the license and then you check it. So I think that kind of course, there are dangers there, but it speaks, as the same goes for music, you just can't use music without paying for it. You will have to get through the license. I think it's funny because I once tried to upload a video on YouTube, and we were dancing to some kind of music unknowingly, and the video got refused because of copyrights. So there was like, oh, I didn't even think about it, but we were just playing it in the background. And then I think it's a great example. YouTube was like, no, not going there. So, but it's more, I think, or maybe it's just me, but I can imagine that because I've heard about pictures, I've heard about music, copyrights and things like that. The one thing I don't think, well, I know you very well and I follow you and I see all the great content that you share, but a lot of us don't know, how must my website be compliant? Because, we have the cookies and the privacy statement and all that, but what really are just in highlight, because I know it's very specific and nobody should do this without actually consulting you. Let me show your where they can reach you, but just give us some pointers in general, even though you can't do it in general, but in general, as to what do we need to at least keep in mind when we're thinking about having a website and making sure it's compliant.
Sure. Well, number one, websites, again, are national and international. So you need to decide who's your target audience. Honestly, if you're not going to sell, like if you're in the US and you don't want to sell internationally, then you're going to need a disclaimer or disclosure to inform potential customers that they can only get the product or your service inside the US, correct?
Okay.
You need to know that. So disclaimers, disclosures are crucial on websites.
Yeah.
Obviously, the terms and conditions or terms of use, whichever way you want to call it, but they're absolutely crucial to have on a website because that is your legally binding contract between the business of the website, right, and the end user of your website, the do's and don'ts. all right?
Yeah.
And obviously, the privacy policy, it talks about what kind of information and how do you protect it and why are you collecting it and like yada yada yada. So those are musts on a website. Also, very very important. The days of plug it and forget it are so long gone. The law is a very much breeding, living creature,
Yeah.
right? It
Mm-hmm.
changes often. And as the law changes, your compliance has to change along with it. So I always recommend obviously doing a quarterly review of your marketing campaigns and that includes your social media, that includes your website, and update things as necessary and make the changes and the corrections that you need, because just because it was legally compliant when you launch, it doesn't mean it's legally compliant 3 months later or even a week later. Honestly, I mean, things change a lot and fast. So
Yeah.
it is absolutely necessary to make sure you stay compliant. So again, plug it and forget it, not happening anymore.
Okay.
And one other thing you do need to be in think about is the ADA online compliance. So can people with disabilities maneuver through your website? And there's been a lot of lawsuits in that. And it's funny, I posted about the latest federal circuit court case this morning. So
Okay. But what is people with disabilities? Just to spell it out, what does that
oh,
mean?
oh, by the way, we're not the only country with ADA online compliance. A lot of countries around the world require that your website be easily maneuverable by people. For example, if people who have disabilities like hearing impair, sight impair, motor impair, they use a lot of them do use what's called a screen reader that works with your website. So your website designer needs to make it in the back end where it's compliant with certain technical requirements in order for the screen reader to be able to do, um, you know, pick up on the things on your website and be able to move through your website. The other thing is, for example, I'm going to give you an example. Whenever you post a video, make sure you have closed caption on your video.
Yeah.
So that's important.
I got that. I was
No,
thinking about it.
no, but seriously, that's really important.
Yeah, no, but I have a friend. Basically, she's in the US, and she is how do you say that? Hearing impaired. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
So she always asks for subtitles, and I know how important it is. So even this show right now is getting subtitles. They're automated. So sometimes someone reached out the other day and he said, "Oh, your subtitles are interesting because it said nude secret." And I was like, "What?" Because they're automated, so they don't pick everything up. So for my name, for example, it's not Yvonne Dam, but it gets to Yvonne Edam. I don't mind. At least you can follow it and you get the gist. So it's follow for people that can't correctly hear everything, they can read it. So yeah. Okay, so I'm there, subtitles on videos.
Yeah, and there's a list of the technicalities that need to be done. So
Right.
if you're going to get your website redone
Yeah.
or upgraded or
Uh-huh.
reviewed,
Yeah.
please make sure you do so with someone who is well aware of what the list of technicalities that are necessary so you're legally compliant with that field of law as well.
But then I understand that's or I guess that not every website builder knows this.
No,
Right.
no, but because there's so many lawsuits in that field of law, people are becoming more and more aware of it. So yeah, just make sure that before you sign that contract for redoing your website, that there's something in your contract you make sure that they understand needs to be ADA online compliant and that it's going to be maintained as such, and make sure that that person understands what that means.
Yeah.
They're not just yesing you.
But is that really? I can imagine that that's quite a bit to ask from a website designer or a website builder. I don't know how you name that, and that it's rather something they do in conjunction with you.
Right, because what I do is I draft the legal documents.
Yeah.
But I don't do the tech, right?
No, I don't see you building a website.
Want me to do the tech, but I do talk with the tech to give them the understanding of what needs to be done in the background. But again, that's not what I do.
No, but you can tell them what they need to do, and you can check whether it's still meeting the requirements.
And I'm going to throw in a little monkey wrench.
Yeah.
So I don't do cybersecurity, but I do work with cybersecurity attorneys, and privacy and cybersecurity are very much related, because privacy is what you're collecting, why you're collecting it, yada, 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 right? Like who you're sharing with. And the cybersecurity is part of that is, okay, now that you have all this information, you need to protect it. How are you protecting it? Where are you protecting it? And what is your, you need to have all these rules in place as to who's in charge and how do you protect it and how do you do everything by the law, and what if you have a breach. So that's a whole other field of law that also comes into play if you're going to be collecting information and you have files and people that have personal identifiable information, otherwise known as PII. So yeah, there's a lot of legal issues that need to be, businesses need to be compliant with. Now, I have a very simple website. I purposely go out of my way to not collect anything. Anybody wants me, they know how to find me. I'm easy to find, I'm easy to reach. So I purposely don't collect anything because I have enough information that I have to be responsible for when I work on my clients' cases, that I don't really want to be more responsible even for more information from my website. So I just go for myself in that way.
But that's interesting then, Audrey. I'm thinking, so basically we're talking about the cookies, right? And the tracking.
Cookies, tracking, if you have a fill out form, if you have a sign up for my newsletter button, anything that you collect, right?
Right.
So, and by the way, cookies are maybe going away soon. Google is in the process of trying to get rid of the cookies. So,
okay.
But we can talk more about that when it's about to happen. And it's not happening anytime soon. But yeah, there's a lot of work being done to get rid of the cookies. But yes, you need to have a cookie banner with a cookie policy where you give people the option to opt out or opt in. Either way, it needs to be on the website, because if you don't have that, then you're illegally collecting information or tracking people illegally. So, but then again, which law are you going to follow, right? Because CCPA, CPRA, and then SHIELD Act and GDPR, everybody has different definitions of what that means. So what do you do?
Yeah. Well, basically, I think what we all should do, we're going to call you.
Thank you.
I think that's the best advice, because I see we've been chatting, and I find it so interesting. So I'm really grateful, but our time is coming to an end. So if anybody has any questions, and I think this has really opened our eyes, they should contact you. The preferred best way is to do that through LinkedIn.
Definitely.
Audrey LinkedIn, it's very easy. And before we close it, Audrey, so Robin says, I have a ton of questions. Can I reach out? Robin, definitely go to Audrey. Audrey is very open to chat. Sorry, Audrey, you can say that yourself.
Yeah, absolutely reach out. Obviously, LinkedIn is the quickest and easiest way. And as you can see, I'm even using my name, so it's easy to find me. But if you want to have a one-on-one, we can set up a Zoom call. You can find my Calendly link on Zoom. So, excuse me, on LinkedIn.
On Zoom as well, but it's
appointment.
harder to find.
That's why I give out my LinkedIn, because it's just easier. It has everything, any which way to find me.
Excellent.
But if you're going to call, please leave a message so I can call you back. Because if you don't leave a message, then I don't know that you called.
Okay, cool. So before we wrap it up, is there a final question or something you want to leave for the listeners or viewers that as a parting message before we wrap it up for today?
Yeah, it is very wise for every business to take that marketing budget and take a chunk out of it and devote it to legal compliance, because it is better to do it up front and keep it up versus having to defend a lawsuit, which are extremely expensive, and of course everything else that comes with the stress of having a lawsuit or a letter from the government, any agency. So just do it right from the beginning.
I like that.
And less costly.
Okay, do it right from the beginning, call Audrey, and make sure that your marketing campaign and your website are compliant. And with that, we've come to the end of this show. Thank you very much, Audrey, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks. Everyone who has been watching, if you're watching this in the replay and you have any queries, just leave them in the comments. We'll definitely get back to you. And otherwise, thank you. Looking forward to hearing from you and seeing you again tomorrow, same time, same place. Goodbye.